You said touchy.
The Fourth Amendment of the Constitution states the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. We as citizens want to be safe when we drive, but are you willing to sacrifice your civil liberties for it? What are you willing to give up? As a law enforcement officer and an instructor in SFSTs, or Standardized Field Sobriety Test Practitioner, I understand the importance of DWI enforcement and the danger of those who drive impaired. During this presentation, I want everybody to be very clear that driving while intoxicated is a serious and dangerous criminal act. While driving impaired, lives are endangered, most of which are innocent victims. Although there are more productive ways to curtail DWI incidents or arrests, the use of roadblocks violate our Fourth Amendment rights, are not as effective as perceived, and often create non-prosecutable cases due to evidence dismissal. So what are our rights? Violation of the Fourth Amendment, our constitutional right. So the Fourth Amendment prevents all persons from being subjected to unreasonable searches. In Texas, the law is quite clear under what circumstances a search may be conducted without a warrant. A roadblock is a suspicionless investigation that has zero probable cause. The protection from unreasonable search without warrant or probable cause. So what is probable cause? There must be enough evidence that would cause a reasonable or prudent person to believe that a crime has been or is about to be committed. This evidence is then presented to a judge who must agree before authorizing the signing or granting a warrant. So if the fact that roadblocks violate our civil rights doesn't get your attention, let's look at the effectiveness. Are roadblocks effective in combating drunk drivers? In today's economy, county government and federal government don't have the additional funds to provide for DWI enforcement. Roadblocks create traffic nightmares that facilitate vehicle crashes. The manpower alone to safely administer such an endeavor is cumbersome. And in 2014, Longwell writes in the Las Vegas Review to consider West Virginia, where roughly 130,000 drivers sat through roadblocks between October of 2010 and September of 2011. These inspections yielded only 189 arrests. Seems like a lot, but that's only 3.2% of the state's total DWI arrests during that same period. In the 38 states that allow roadblocks, there are specific requirements that determine how and when roadblock is implemented. Because of this, intoxicated drivers, they just go around them. By following state requirements, law enforcement is forced to disclose the location and the time in which roadblocks are to occur. Technology apps have been created on smartphones that route the intoxicated motorist around the checkpoint. Now that we've looked at the effectiveness of roadblocks, let's look at the outcomes of the searches. The fruits of the poisonous tree, we all know what those are. Because there's no probable cause to stop the car, subsequently any evidence found is not valid. Since 1920, the Supreme Court ruled in the Silverthorne Lumber Company versus the United States that this doctrine holds that evidence gathered with the assistance of illegally obtained information must be excluded from trial. Law enforcement don't need justification to stop and speak to someone on the street. However, an individual may refuse to speak to that officer and continue with his or her business. For that, the officer to stop and detain, the officer must be able to articulate reasonable suspicion. Gotcha. For the officer so we talked about reasonable suspicion, and then it may need to lead to probable cause. So in conclusion, driving while intoxicated has become an epidemic, with the fatality deaths increasing every year, and many of those deaths innocent motorists. As a society, we must find a way to stop the senseless tragedies. But to what extremes? I can't drive on a major highway without being stopped on my way to my favorite eating establishment. The use of roadblocks violates our Fourth Amendment rights and are not as effective as perceived, and often the roadblocks create non-prosecutable cases due to the evidence dismissal. How much of our freedom should we be asked to give? How much intrusion should be tolerated? If we allow this to occur, where does the intrusion go from? And when does it stop, and who says enough is enough? for me?